Let's start, shall we, with that £1.8 billion of extra funding for the Health Service. Presumably you welcome that with open arms.
Well, we'll see if this money is ever delivered. Over the last 2 years, 145 separate announcements for new beds, new equipment, upgrades to buildings have been announced by ministers, totalling £2.5 billion, and only 100 million of it has ever actually been delivered. It's sheer incompetence on the part of Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary. Look, our hospitals are suffering from their ceilings collapsing, sewage pipes bursting, cancer patients waiting for diagnosis have had their appointments cancelled because of faulty equipment. Seriously ill mental health patients at risk of suicide are in old, decrepit, dormitory-style wards. And it's because Tory ministers have done these smash-and-grab raids on the investment budgets, cutting over £4 billion from those budgets. And it means today that our hospitals, our NHS, is facing a backlog of £6 billion worth of repairs, putting patient safety, patient lives at risk every day. It's no wonder the top advisors of Boris Johnson says Tory MPs don't care about the NHS.
So how much would Labour spend on the Health Service in additional funding? I mean, the Health Foundation suggests a figure of £6 billion is necessary. Is that one that you would see?
Well, we, at the last election, said we'd want to invest an extra £10 billion in the capital infrastructure of our NHS. We could have a general election very soon. There's speculation in the newspapers again today that the Tories are preparing for a general election. That's what today's announcement's all about. And if a general election comes along in the next few weeks or in the autumn, then we will come forward with a new funding settlement for the NHS. But what we are clear on is that we're prepared to put more money into our NHS so we can rebuild our hospitals, we can rebuild our doctors' surgeries, and half of doctors say their surgeries, their local general practice surgeries, are not good enough. So we can buy the modern equipment, so we can get our cancer diagnosis rates much better. Over 40,000 people wait beyond 6 weeks for a diagnosis. It used to be 3,000 people 9 years ago. And that's because we've got some of the lowest numbers of MRI scanners and CT scanners in the Western world. It's simply not good enough. These Tory cuts are putting lives at risk, and we have to put more investment into the NHS. You're not going to get it with Boris Johnson.
On occasion, the Labour Party has been accused of indulging in a little bit of project fear-mongering. I suspect people will make that accusation today about the latest pace of Labour research, which suggests that signing a free trade agreement with the United States could see drug prices spiral out of control.
It's not remotely scaremongering. This is what the US's own Health Secretary has said. The US have said that they want to force the NHS to buy American pharmaceuticals, American medicines at more expensive prices. So a trade deal with the US, not only will it mean more US firms coming in to run sections of our NHS, so privatising our NHS, and Matt Hancock is already allowing £9 billion worth of contracts to go to the private sector, but it will mean the US pharmaceutical industry forcing us to buy more expensive drugs. Asthma drugs,
why would that be any different
drugs,
under Labour?
Cancer drugs.
Why would that be any different under Labour, given you're both going to have to sign the same FTA?
No, because we are not going to sign a trade deal with the United States that would allow the US to come in, buy up the NHS and force the NHS to buy pharmaceuticals from US pharmaceuticals companies.
So we're not going to sign an FTA with the United States then under a Labour government?
We are not going to smash up the regulatory regime, the nice regulatory regime that we have in this country that has served us well for many, many years, and which allows us to have pharmaceuticals, allows us to have medicines at reasonable prices. The US specifically want a trade deal to force us to buy more expensive medicines, and it will mean the NHS forking out more for insulin, for asthma medications, for cancer drugs. I don't believe that's fair, and Tory ministers should rule it out today.
Well, we should say at this point, of course, that the government has on a number of occasions said that the NHS is not for sale. But I wonder, whilst we have
this is about pharmaceuticals, though. This is about pharmaceuticals, though, isn't it? This is about the pharmaceutical industry. And the US Secretary for Health has specifically said he wants other countries, including the UK, to pay more for US pharmaceuticals. This will be a red line in one of their trade deals, and that is why it's so important and why we're raising it today.
I wonder if we can turn our attention to what happened in Brecon in the by-election this week. This was not a happy hunting ground for Labour, admittedly. But given how long this government has been in power, given the new leader and the popularity which we keep hearing is attributed to him from senior Labour figures like yourself, why didn't Labour turn up?
Well, I've been involved in election campaigns all my political life for 20 years. That by-election very quickly became a contest between the Liberals and the Tory party. So it's not surprising that the Labour vote would be squeezed in that by-election. In fact, I remember by-elections when we were in government. Sorry, I'm getting attacked by flies here. But I remember by-elections when we were in. Sorry about that. I remember by-elections when we were in government, and we were going on to win subsequent general elections where the Labour vote was squeezed significantly because the by-election became a fight between the Liberals and the Tory party. That's not unusual in by-elections.
Well, it's certainly not unusual in the by-elections that Labour has fought recently. Brecon, you dropped your vote share by 12.5%. Peterborough, you dropped it by 17%. Newport West, 13%. In 2018, Lewisham East, you went down by 18%. 2017, you dropped by 2% in Stoke and 5% in Copeland. There is one direction of travel in all of this, and it's entirely the wrong direction for a party that says that it's ready for a general election.
Yeah, but in those by-elections, like Lewisham and Newport, we held on. And actually Peterborough, which was a Tory seat until 2017, a seat that all the pundits and experts said we were going to lose to the Tory party, we held on to that Peterborough seat. I mean, that was a Labour seat between 1997 and I think 2005. So we lost it under the days of Tony Blair. We won it back in 2017 and we held on to it in a difficult by-election, which every expert would, and every time I came on shows like this, they said, oh, you're going to lose this Peterborough by-election, aren't you? It's the end of Labour. And we held on in Peterborough in a key marginal, the sort of marginal seat that would be which will be the electoral battleground between Labour and the Conservative Party in the general election whenever it comes.
I'm sorry to kind of bang on about this point, but there are plenty of people within the party and without the party who make the point that Jeremy Corbyn has to have had a role in the poor performances that there have been. I mean, your argument essentially seems to be, well, we held on. Surely that isn't good enough at this point in the electoral cycle. Pat Glass making the point on Twitter not that long ago. Surely it's now time to wake up, smell the coffee and change the leader.
Well, no, of course we shouldn't be changing the leader. Jeremy Corbyn has been elected by the party members, and the party members want Jeremy Corbyn to go on and fight the next general election when it comes. I suspect it will come in the autumn, certainly reading today's newspapers it will. And the reason that we don't need any division in the Labour Party is that we've got Boris Johnson, who is a very right-wing Prime Minister, who is taking us out of the European Union, probably with a no deal. You had a Treasury Minister on your programme last week saying we are turbocharging towards no deal. No deal will be a catastrophe for the National Health Service. It'll be a catastrophe for our smooth access to medicines when we import 37 million packs of medicine every month from the EU. It'll be a catastrophe for our economy. We'll lose billions of pounds worth in investment. We've seen in the newspapers today that schools are worried about the supply chain for school dinners. We might not get school dinners in our schools.
Okay, Mr. Ashworth.
So that is the big divide in British politics. We don't want division in the Labour Party.
But how are you going to stop no deal? I mean, if you look at the papers this morning, Dominic Cummings and others are absolutely assured of the fact that you've missed the boat in terms of a vote of confidence. If the Labour Party's priority was to stop no deal, why on earth didn't you call the vote before Parliament rose for the summer recess?
There'll be opportunities for us when Parliament returns in September to stop no deal.
Not according to Number 10. They feel that if a vote of confidence were lost, there's a sufficient wiggle room with the Prime Minister's discretion that they could call a general election that would be after. They would call a general election which polling day would be after October the 31st.
Well, let's see what happens in September, because the government will have to bring forward appropriate legislation to prepare for this Brexit no-deal exit that they want. And we will use all the means available to us in Parliament, working across the parties, because we know there are plenty of Tory MPs who want to block no deal as well, particularly a lot of those who Boris Johnson, perhaps rather foolishly in retrospect, sacked from the Cabinet 2 weeks ago. We're working with MPs across the House of Commons, and we will work to stop no deal. Tory ministers are turbocharging towards a no deal. That's what the Treasury Minister said on your programme last Sunday. And I think to push us out of the European Union at the end of October, beginning of November, on a no-deal basis, as we're going into winter, which is always a difficult time for the NHS, is the height of irresponsibility when we know a no-deal Brexit will be disastrous for the NHS. It will put lives at risk. That is the gamble that Boris Johnson is taking this October, November. He is playing with people's lives and he's playing with the future of the NHS by turbocharging towards a no deal.
We are just about to run out of time, but I just want to be absolutely clear about this. Do you accept that you may have missed the boat in terms of a vote of no confidence, that the time might not be there for a general election to take place before we leave the European Union?
No, I don't accept that. I don't agree with Dominic Cummings' analysis. And by the way, we keep reading about what Dominic Cummings says and doesn't say. We know he said that Tory MPs don't care about the NHS. We've got that on the record. Why doesn't Dominic Cummings just come out and do interviews? Because every newspaper seems to report what he's saying at special advisors meetings in Number 10. You know, this guy is running Downing Street. He wants to take us out of the European Union with a disastrous no deal. He believes Tory MPs don't care about the NHS. I agree with him on that. But I know that an NHS is going to be absolutely catastrophic for the... a no deal is going to be catastrophic for the NHS, and it's putting patient lives at risk. Boris Johnson is highly irresponsible by refusing to take it off the table.